for all. Can everyone who is in the webinar take the question, please? This is a great insight as we move into the second year of the single-use plastic ban in India. We will wait till 60 plus and then we'll end the poll. Looking at the trash collected, is the single-use plastic ban effective in your area? Looking at the trash collected in the Himalayan Cleanup 2024, is the single-use plastic ban effective in your area? Sure. Can you show the results, please, Nupur? Well, there you have the results. There is work to be done, even though the ban is from July 1st, 2022. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your insights. We move on to Sikkim in the Indian Himalayan region. And I call upon a very tall steward, Ms. Usha Lachungpa, an ex-forester, an environmental leader of Sikkim, who's done a lot of work on conservation, but then intersects it with a huge amount of work with the community in Sikkim on issues of waste. Usha ma'am, over to you to share your insights of the Himalayan Cleanup. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Yeah, okay. First of all, a warm welcome to everybody on this great day. Thanks to the entire Zero Waste Himalaya initiative, IMI, everyone. At least we have, I feel, a sizable target audience representatives. We are managing to reach out. And I'm talking from a place which is about 7 kilometers from the capital, Bangkok, Sikkim. And we have tried to have this kind of segregation plan.
Ma'am, I think if you could check your volume.
Okay.
Maybe ma'am, you can keep your mic close to your mouth.
Is this better? Is this better?
No, not yet.
How about now?
No, it's very low. Voice is very low.
Can I get it on my phone then? But I might be sick sometime. I'll try from my phone.
Maybe you can just remove the headphone.
My laptop doesn't. Can you hear me clearly now?
Yes. That's better, ma'am. If you speak closer to the laptop.
I will. Okay. Yeah, I mean, what we have seen is in our area, we have been trying to do waste collection and have a community involvement, total community involvement in segregating our waste and collecting it over much before the Zero Waste Himalaya initiative started. But even then, we find that, there is a lot of enthusiasm amongst the local people, which includes schools, it includes the monasteries, it includes the hotels, the shops, the local people themselves, almost everybody, the panchayats, the different samajas, all the social groups, community representatives, even, and there's so much of enthusiasm on the day of collection, and we are all so proud, which I feel very sad, everybody is so happy that they have collected so many kgs of garbage, instead of feeling disgusted, they all feel really proud. And then the next day, all the garbage is back. So we wanted to, why for the cleanest village, Kitab, but nothing happened because the next day everything comes back and then people say, oh, it's not me, it's not us. We don't know who's doing it. The taxi drivers are stopping by. So that was one thing we found, that despite all the enthusiasm, there is some sizable section of the target audience that we are actually missing in this campaign. And one of the reasons also could be, that we have this kind of one-upmanship and, in many monasteries in Sikkim now, they've stopped using plastic for offerings. But still here in the villages, in the smaller households where we have religious functions, this is a big thing, to give all these little items which are all wrapped in non-recyclable plastic. So I feel, the disease of affluenza that I often speak about is one of the big reasons why we need to show that we have money and we can spend it. That is one thing. On the other end of the spectrum, we have this kind of huge labor force with more and more constructions coming up. And this labor force is consuming enormous quantities of drinks and cheap foods, which they can get for 5 rupees, 10 rupees, and sting and, the cigarettes and beeries. So that is being consumed by the labor force, which try as we might, we're not able to stop them from disposing it off carelessly. Added to that is the tourism related issues that we all talk about. So we feel that, we do these efforts, but we lack consistency. We are targeting the schools, the taxi drivers in shops, etc. But we are not really able to get to the main audience, which may not be talking in English, which is going by taxi and coming home and, taking their children to school and walking them back with small Kinder Joy. We are getting, negative flag from the shops who are saying that if we don't sell this, this is our livelihood. So the people's perception of poverty, I thought, was something we need to keep in mind. And even, across all economic strata, I found that there's enormous use of plastic in the kitchens. So here also I've been trying to ensure, trying to talk to the ladies, saying that, why they shouldn't be using plastic mugs with the hot tea and things like that, or jugs. Even during community functions, you find tea being dispensed in plastic jugs, even though it may be in steel glasses. So one of the things I found out was we are doing the THC, but we are not really taking the audience to the landfill sites. So these are some of my observations for just now. I hope I'm not exceeded my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So, ma'am has always been enthusiastic. She's always the first one to say, when are we doing it? So like you said, you started before the inception and it's gone on. So thank you, ma'am, for taking the lead and get well soon, So she's been really positive of still being able to come to the webinar today, straight out of the hospital with dengue. So get well soon, ma'am. Thank you for sharing. We'll go back to asking everyone to join in and share the insights. Nupur, can you run the next poll, please? Thank you, ma'am. Who do you think will be the top 3 polluting companies for the Himalayan Cleanup 2024? please note that the question says, who do you think will be the top 3 polluting companies from the Himalayan Cleanup 2024? Who do you think will be the top 3 polluting companies for the Himalayan Cleanup 2024? We'll just keep it for a few more seconds and then I'll ask the declaration of the results of this particular poll. Great. Nupur, can you show the results, please? Kindly remember what has been the results, and we will check once we have 2024 results presented in a while. Thank you. Now I move on to invite another champion from Arunachal Pradesh, R.K. Paul Chong, from an NGO called Amaya. And he has been there in this movement since inception, has been doing some amazing work. Over to you, Paul, and we give you minutes to share your insights. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Roshan. So, based on the last cleanup that we had, single-use polythene plastics topped the list as per our collection and audit. And then, of course, the beer cans, that also becomes part of the waste. Maybe because in Arunachal Pradesh is tax-free and beer cans are very cheap. Per can you get 50, 60 rupees. And then comes Lays and cheap packages. So these are the top 3 which we found in the audit. And the things that is like an insight from this Himalayan cleanup since 2018 that we took part was like, first, we have found that at individual level, there is definitely a voluntary insight that happens. And one feels that he or she should come forward and then take part in this movement. Is a people movement, and then that influences the community, and then of course the collaboration comes between different stakeholders, where government officials and officials, they feel that we should take part in this, and the collaboration comes from this individual to community collaboration. What insights that we also found were like there were large awareness being created from one to community to collaboration, and in this awareness we found that definitely there is a proper waste disposal and impact of littering. And Arunachal Pradesh with very thin population, especially in this lower Diwan Valley, after the opening of the longest bridge, that is Dola Sadia Bridge, which is a kilometer more than 9 kilometers. After that, the inflow of the tourists that came from local Assam and India and outside, so that really brought in huge chunk of littering, and the pollution increased. And the volunteers of Himalayan Cleanup and the organization, we are here, so we tried different methods and ways of creating awareness to them to be more eco-friendly in their consumption, in their habits, in their attitudes. And then if at all they come with sorts of packages, bottles, at least to dispose of correctly in the bin, and then at least we don't litter. So, and then also this awareness created a sort of policy enforcement. District administration became more concerned, and they started calling for a collaboration between different stakeholders. They imposed that from house to house, door to door, there will be the collection where 50 rupees, 100 rupees has to be imposed to sustain the waste collectors honorarium and monthly management, because government will look at waste management. Even the Duda District Urban Development Agency, they don't have that much of fund to increase the manpower when it comes to waste workers and collectors. So the initiation brought about, THC has brought about a policy change where government district administration said, we have to put in place a system where some minimum amount of collection has to be there depending on who produces the highest amount of waste. So institution, households, hotels, different sectors that we have, based on that, how much of waste are being produced, so they impose a certain amount of amount, and then this were collected to look after the well-being of the waste collectors. And also I found that definitely this every year practice of 26 May has led to a behavioral change, where the change of mindset has started happening, the attitude, and of course that has led to a habit, and this habit has led to formation of eco clubs in schools. And then Amia is very proud in taking up, and this year the Plastic Freedom Challenge Week 2024 is going to be amazing. We took off the launch today in a school where 500 students took part. And coming days, we have a pack of activities. We have got local poetry recitation when it comes to plastic. We have got poster making competition. We have a quiz on plastic competition. And we have got a sitting with District Administrator Madam. Will be our Eco Club members will go to Madam and then have a direct question, very tough questions to ask to her. And what is her stand on this waste management and plastic? Because there are 6-7 companies, giant companies like L&T, NSPC, going for big dams and big infrastructures. So DC has got a big say how you are going to look up to these companies as to making a decision. So amazingly, we have come to the arrival of this Eco Club where youth are involved, students are involved, and they are taking very active role. And so in this is the sharing that I want to have with you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you for joining from Arunachal, and also like reminding today is the launch of the Plastic Freedom Challenge,
Right.
also, as well as Zero Waste Himalaya Day. In 2010, a couple of people who I'm not part of dreamt of this platform called Zero Waste Himalaya in Beer Institute. But I think also importantly that there are systemic changes that are happening, but we still need to do more. Maybe sometimes we want the speed to be in our level, but sometimes it takes a lot of continued effort. So thank you, Paul. I'll go back to asking Nupur to ask one more question to all the participants before we really go into showing what the results are for the Himalayan Cleanup 2024. So Nupur, can you run the last question for today? Do you think the campaign contributes to bringing behavioral change in participation? And Paul overshot this. I think maybe you had the sixth sense of knowing what the fourth question was. This is interesting. It's running neck to neck. At least no one's saying no. Oh, there is. I spoke too early. Do you think the campaign contributes to bringing behavioral change in participants? I'll wait for 2 more seconds and then. And I think this is an important question because if you remember the toolkit that was sent out, can you share the results, please, Nupur? It kind of said, this is not the end. Cleanups are not an end in itself, but it is a good place to begin with. So now, thank you, everyone. Thank you, especially Preeti, Usha ma'am, and Paul coming in from Ladakh, Sikkim, and Arunachal, giving us a good slice of the Himalaya that is there, the Indian Himalayan region, and also then taking forward the stewardship and leadership in the movement. Thank you, everyone who participated in the polls. We come to the important section of what you might have been waiting for, and to see if all that you said comes true or not, to go into really calling on and to see the results of the Himalayan cleanup. I call upon Priya to take the presentation. Priya is Zero Waste Himalaya core team member, the past secretary of IMI, as well as our current member of Integrated Mountain Initiative and the core team member of Zero Waste Himalaya. Priya, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Roshan. It's really lovely to be here on Zero Waste Himalaya Day, and a very happy Zero Waste Himalaya Day to everyone here. I wish it was not online like this and that we could actually be sitting together in person, but of course that was not to be. But I'm sure maybe in the coming years we will be, I think, celebrating Zero Waste Himalaya Day together. Let's hope for that. So let me just quickly run you through the results. So let me just quickly share the details of the cleanups across the state so that we have some idea as to what's the kind of data that we are looking at that has come in. As you can see, Sikkim has by far the largest number of cleanups that has happened, with 259 cleanups just happening within this tiny state. And that was possible because we have such a strong support of the government, especially the Swachh Bharat mission in the Rural Development Department. The Gramin Swachh Bharat mission has always been, supportive of the zero waste movement since the past years, and the Himalayan cleanup is almost like part of their own official campaign, which is why we get almost every Gram Panchayat taking part in the Himalayan cleanup. But besides that, we also have very strong support from the Education Department, who also issue official circulars every year for every school to, to take part in the Himalayan cleanup. So that's how we get in a lot of cleanups happening in Sikkim. So we are very thankful to the department. I'm sure officials from the department are also here today in the webinar. So really grateful for the support. And then you can see that in Ladakh, we've had 16 led by Preeti's group and a few others. Also to tell you that there are many more cleanups that happen, but not all of them also send in their data. So this is how, the details of the cleanups look like. And you can also see in the chart that it's mostly rural areas that we are cleaning up, but also because so many schools are taking part, there's a lot of institutions also that get cleaned up. So schools basically are cleaning up their own premise and their own neighborhood. But of course, a fair bit of tourist spots are also being cleaned up. Protected areas are being cleaned up. Urban spaces are also cleaned up, and water bodies as well. So then to announce the total amount of waste that we picked up is that number. Last year we had picked up 1,11,000. This year we picked up 1,21,739, of which the total plastics is 1,06,857. And then, so if you look at the percentage wise, again, a large part of it, just like last year, 87.7% of what we pick up is just plastics. But of course, this is not household waste that we are talking about. That's the disclaimer that we must put out there. This is basically what is littered that we are picking up. So in that sense, there is some sort of bias that happens as to what kind of trash is it that we are talking about. So if we look at the waste that was picked up per state, this graph shows that, of course, Sikkim by far, because of the sheer number of cleanups that were happening, picked up a lot of waste. And then, the red one shows the plastic, and the green shows the non-plastic waste that was picked up in the states. And in every state, you can see that it's the plastic that completely overshoots what is the non-plastic trash. And then, of course, something which we've been finding year after year is this multi-layer dilemma of just how much of what we pick up in the trash is just non-recyclable. And so if you break down the plastics into what's recyclable and what is non-recyclable, we see year after year that a large volume of it is actually just non-recyclable waste, and that is where actually the crux of the entire challenge that we are faced with lies. That so much of it is just non-recyclable. And for mountains, actually, even if it is a recyclable plastic or a trash piece of trash, we have challenges of linkages to recycling. So even the recyclables don't get picked up at all in many cases. So then, the question of how to deal with the multi-layered, the non-recyclable ones always remains. And of course, what we also call out on that, there is hardly any of the extended producer responsibility that is being implemented in the mountains. Even if in some places there are certain EPR being followed, it is very minuscule, and also the cost of collection, etc., just does not add up for the mountain. So which is why from IMI as well as from Zero Waste Himalaya, this has been one of our constant pushes, that we need to have a look at the EPR from a mountain lens. And also at the same time, there is a very strong push that these MLPs should be linked to the nearest cement kilns. That is in fact what is written in the solid waste management guidelines, plastic waste management guidelines for every state. But for mountain states that are so remote, it is a big challenge to connect these MLPs. There are challenges of collection, of aggregation, and then just transporting out is a cost that is just too high to bear for the states at the moment, which is why a lot of these multi-layered plastics, these non-recyclables, are just in our landfills and in our waterways and in the forests as litter. So we talked about single-use plastics in the poll, and this is what we found for this year. It also shows what it was in 22, 23, and 24. Of course, we still find that there is still single-use plastics, especially the banned items that we are collecting year after year. And I think it was also indicated in the poll that we had a few minutes back that most of us were saying that the ban is not very effective in our own respective areas. So this year we found that 3% of what is collected is the single-use plastic items that have been banned. And then the other thing which we keep talking about is also the waste and the food intersect, because when we look at what is the type of plastics that we are retrieving, it's mostly food packaging. This year it's quite high. In fact, it's 84.2% of all the plastic waste was just coming from food packaging. And so it is really very disturbing, because most of these trash items, in fact, are picked up from around school areas as well. I think Preeti was also reflecting on that same thing. So it is an indication of, the amount of junk food consumption that's happening. And if we look at what is the material within the food packaging, 71% of it is non-recyclable plastics. This just shows the breakup of the food packaging into the various items. Like, of course, the biggest chunk of it is just the food wrapper, meaning the chips, the biscuits, the YY, the instant noodles, that kind of packaging. Then beverage bottles, then juice boxes, then other food pack items would mainly mean like the other milk Tetra Pak cartons. There's a lot of bottle caps and rings, other bottles. Sachet would mean the tiny sweet wrappers, like your center fresh, center fruit, that kind of tiny wrapper is categorized as sachet. Cutlery, grocery bags, and then straws and lollipop sticks, etc. So this is basically the breakup of what the food packaging breakup looks like. And of course, this has been something which we've been talking about since the last 3 years, is this energy drink called as Sting, which is where the label clearly says, though in very small fonts, it says that it is not recommended for children, but it is children, and it is around schools that we find these bottles a lot. So if you see 20% of the beverage bottles is actually just Sting bottles that have been collected. And also because just another uh, thing to point out here is to remember that Sikkim actually makes up for most of this data. So, and when we've been comparing with other cleanup sites across the other other states, we found that this challenge is not so much in the other states as much as we have it in Sikkim, and of course also Darjeeling. So somehow it has happened that Sting has become very popular in these parts, whereas in Ladakh and also in Arunachal Pradesh, we found that it is Mountain Dew, as Preeti was mentioning, that was the highest number of littered item that they found, everywhere is Mountain Dew, whereas for these parts, Sikkim and Darjeeling, so so we were kind of discussing the other day, how has this come about? Is there like some advertisement thing that is going on, or is there some targeted, we were sort of trying to figure that out also, because it does seem that the popularity of Sting is more here in Sikkim and Darjeeling side. So if you can, if you see from 2022, that was, I think, around the time that it was not there when we were doing the 2018, 2019 cleanups. It came, around 2021, 22. So it's been steadily kind of, it's climbed up, and then, so 22% was in last year, and this year it's still 20%. So it does call on policies that how do we limit access of these problematic products, especially to children, when there are clear warning labels on it. So yes, so we come then to the top polluters of the mountains, and I think you got it right, in fact, in the poll. The poll said that number one is PepsiCo, and yes, number one is PepsiCo for this year. Number two was mentioned as Chowdhury Group YY, and it is Chowdhury Group YY. Last year, Chowdhury Group was in the 4th position. This year, it has climbed up higher to take the second place. And then it's basically just the mix and match of the same top 10 polluters from last year, who've just sort of switched places, but in fact, it's exactly the same 10 companies that we found last year that are there again in the top 10. But again, to remind that a lot of this data actually is Sikkim and Darjeeling based, with Ladakh following in 3rd position. So that way, the data is a little skewed. If you look at what is the most popular brands, then it's shown in this in these circles. So YY, all the YY Mama Mimi, this Chowdhury Group instant noodles, that was basically the top most items, like brand wise, that was found, followed by Lay's and then Sting. But PepsiCo then climbs up because both Lay's and Sting are manufactured by PepsiCo. So in the circles, you can see what are the different brands that have come up. So we also have Appy, which is the Parle product. Then we have Bingo from ITC, the Center Fresh, etc. is all Perfetti Van Mill. Then Fruity, of course, is also Parle Agro. And yeah, Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola. So yeah, so that's sharing the top polluters of the Himalayan Cleanup 2024. And just to place what are some of the key demands that as Zero Waste Himalaya and as IMI, we have been putting forward as part of the Himalayan Cleanup campaign, is to have effective producer responsibility for the mountains, that we do need an amendment for the EPR to work in the mountains so that it has specific targets also for the mountains, that companies also focus on the mountains and not just pick up trash from their own backyards and save all the cost, that they recognize mountain challenges and specificities, which Roshan was talking about right at the beginning, but also we've seen that capacities also of local bodies on what is EPR and how do we get there and how do we take advantage of this framework is also very limited. So these are some of the things that we've kind of put out. And also for the mountains, if there could be a phase out of the multi-layered plastics, which was in fact there in the 2016 plastic waste management rules when it first came out. So could there be something that we could think about specific to the mountains? For certain states, they are thinking of working with companies to look at redesigning packaging so that at least it's recyclable, so something like that could also be thought of for the mountains, looking at how eco-sensitive these places are. And then of course to say that design out waste is integral also to the producer responsibility. Plastic crisis intersects. So one of the things that we've been very strongly voicing for is how do we reclaim our local food spaces and our local food cultures, and that we do need a lot more campaigns and awareness around this, and that there should be very strict policies on restriction of advertisement of junk food and beverages, but also sale around school premises, etc. There's a lot of work already happening on the front of label packaging that we know that groups are already engaged in. And there also have been very recently some movement, some positive movement there. So front of label packaging is also something which we would really, from the mountains, put a very strong demand for. And then on the third bucket, we also want to look at solutions that go beyond dustbins, go beyond landfills, and that we are looking at systemic changes where we promote decentralized and localized waste management, moving away from centralized solutions. But there is also a need to look at existing waste management systems and how do we review it and make it work for the mountains. And then the single-use plastic bans, of course, is there for nationwide, but can there be something which is more than that for the mountains? I mean, Sikkim, I think, as a classic example of how we already had a really good plastic ban in place, which covered everything. But now with the single-use plastic ban that has come in, there is now this thing, choice for thickness and microns and all that, which kind of has watered down the earlier ban that we had that covered everything. And then also then talking about how do we invest in long-term and consistent awareness and education campaigns. Then of course, the entire Himalaya is all about tourism. It's all about religion. And it's also a lot about protected landscapes. So how do we integrate all of that and have focused interventions? And then of course, what Roshan talked about right at the beginning is allocation of appropriate resources for the mountain states, because everything here in the mountains costs more than what it would cost elsewhere. And that if that is not factored in, then nothing is going to work. So so these are the three buckets of the demands. And to end with the Plastic Freedom Challenge, because from the Himalayan Cleanup, it sort of leads into the Plastic Freedom Challenge, because one of the things that we are highlighting as part of the campaign this year is that it is a fight against plastic pollution and that we need to take companies. So 8th to 15th of August is when the Plastic Freedom Challenge runs, from today till Independence Day. So we welcome everyone to be a part of this campaign. That's about it from my side. Thank you. Roshan?
Thank you, Priya. Thank you. Sorry, my computer is like just froze on me for just a while. Thank you, Priya, for sharing it. We will take in today's webinar and maybe add more insights as such, and then release the report on 12th of August. Thank you, everyone, for staying on. We have what Priya has presented. Thank you. We will move on to three critical feedbacks, insights from three of our friends. And I'll call upon the discussants, who are Miko from Break Free from Plastic. I'm just going to introduce them one after the other. Who is now, in the past 2 years, anchored the sachet work in the Asia Pacific region. He is part of the Break Free from Plastic movement, and he's based in Philippines. Thank you for joining in, and has a great understanding on plastic pollution, climate change, waste management, and also the intersection of urban poverty as such. Maybe I'll just ask you, Miko, each discussant gets 5 minutes to respond to Priya's presentation and 3 minutes to then later on to come back and talk about the way forward. Over to you, Miko, a great friend of ours.
Yeah, thanks Roshan and Priya for the presentation, and also from the sharing from different geographical locations. And I think it's something that I guess a lot of participants here should recognize, is the specificities that are required when we are addressing plastic pollution in mountainous geographies, and just connecting it to the larger picture, which is the ongoing negotiations on the Global Plastics Treaty. I believe it was a delegate from Nepal who actually mentioned to maybe the call is not just within our national regulations as far as maybe India is concerned, but also to consider this as part of the global instruments that we have, at least for our member states. So hopefully that change in language, particularly considering the challenges in such geographies, be considered, at least in the final text of the treaty text for later this year, when member states and delegates observers meet up for the last INC meeting in Korea. I think like it's quite consistent in terms of I guess we won't be surprised already that seeing PepsiCo being the top polluter in these parts of the world, as well as you have local brands like YY also figuring in the ranking. And what's troubling is, at least based on the presentation, is hearing the amount of packaging that's used to make unhealthy food options very accessible to young people. I think that's very troubling to hear. And Sting, for example, it's also something that I see a lot here in the Philippines, and it's also disturbing to hear that this is a product that's very accessible to students there as well. Maybe jumping on to maybe a related study, I think one question that I often hear whenever people start brand audits is this something that's relevant or significant to the work? And I would often acknowledge that we do brand audits because this is a tool for us to raise awareness about the need for better accountability coming from companies. So in other words, it's a campaign tool. And if a government or a state authority or agency or body wanted to like do a baseline data, then I think there are methodologies for that in terms of doing waste audits, just mentioning the waste types of material. But if we are looking at improving our EPR instruments, then I think brand audits with that additional layer of data becomes more robust and relevant to these types of work. And maybe just to update people about maybe adding credibility to this type of work. And hopefully this is something that we would continue in the next few years, is brand audits actually got published in Science Advances. And I would maybe paste the link here. And I think this is something that was published in April earlier this year. And hopefully if you have time to read about this, and I think just to end this feedback, that at least in this article, it discusses about the link of plastic production to plastic pollution. And there's a strong correlation between the amount of plastic produced by companies, PepsiCo et al., and the amount of plastic pollution found globally. And this particular study focused on data gathered from brand audits that were conducted by groups, including Zero Waste Himalaya, at least for the last 5 years. I believe the data was taken from 2018 to 2022. So I think if you are to, you have that opportunity to talk to policymakers or state authorities, and maybe they would remain doubtful whether this kind of exercise is something that's unscientific, feel free to share this study, and maybe they will learn something and support your demands. Thanks, Roshan.
Thanks, Miko. I'll come back to you for the way forward. And I now call upon Amli Adityan, who is the Regional Zero Waste Cities Coordinator of Gaia Asia Pacific, another global ally of ours in Zero Waste Himalaya. She comes in with around 11 years of work on sustainability and waste management, and supports members across the Gaia network of Zero Waste Cities to take forward into action, and also has and works as well as writes a lot around the issue of plastic waste. She also works with the neighborhood communities and children on issues of environment and sustainability. So Amli, you have 5 minutes to give us your insights on what Priya presented, and we'll come back to you for the way forward. Over to you, Amli. Thank you.
Thank you, Roshan, Priya, and the whole Zero Waste Himalaya team. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. Congratulations to all of you, the team, and your army of volunteers for doing it consistently since 2018, and mostly for engaging school children and youth, because as you said, so that they can reflect not just their waste footprint, but also their health habits. And yes, let's also take this opportunity to congratulate PepsiCo for bagging the title of being the top polluter for 3 years in a row. So it's, which brings to the attention of the lack of, resources and targets that are allocated for mountains, especially in India. So as Priya mentioned earlier, we have an EPR. However, it does not include, the EPR for mountains, the collection targets, and so on. And here I would also like to point out that while there is no EPR in the mountains, I think it's also a good opportunity to learn the lessons from the EPR implementation that has happened across cities in India. Maybe I can talk about that later. But I just really want to highlight, especially seeing the EPR implementation that's happening in India, is that the responsibility of the companies should not limit to the end of life of their products and packaging. That is when they become waste, but their full life cycle of costs and impact, and that's missing from the EPR that we have right now. What was very surprising and saddening was that 80% of the packaging that was found during the cleanup was food packaging, and that shows the changing trends in the consumption. and the linkage to the rising level of chronic conditions in India. Anyway, we are the diabetic capital of the world, and the conditions are not just prevalent among adults but children alike. I was very surprised to see the poll results of SUP plastic, as well as the results that Priya presented. Just a fact that Center for Science and Environment published a report, and as a matter of fact, the banned plastics, the banned SUP plastic, forms only 2 to 3% of the plastic consumption that we have. And that's why I think in the waste and brand audit also only 2 to 3% of the total items were banned SUP items. So it's sad that they are still targeting the small players, and among the banned items, none of the multi-layered plastics are there. So a drop in SUP banned items is good, because I saw initially it was 7% and now it has come down to 2 and 3%. It's good, but I worry that that shows that at least some implementation is happening, but probably it's causing a pinch in the pockets of small vendors and retailers who might have switched to other alternatives owing to the fear of penalties. But the sad fact is that the ban still focuses on non-branded items and does not have any mention on phase out of multi-layered plastics. Lastly, a very surprising thing was a lot of bottles were found in the cleanup, be it the Coca-Cola bottle or the Sting, which is very unlikely in a cleanup in city, especially where I come from, like Mumbai, Delhi, wherein we have a good collection, and there are this linkages to recycling unit, which I understand that in mountainous region, owing to it being remote, is challenging. So it's all this brings the attention that we definitely need an EPR for mountains. We do have EPR since last 6-7 years, but with all this insights that I see, I think we should leave no opportunity to push for EPR for mountains, because the challenges that are there in mainland cities is very, very different from what we see in the mountains, and we need separate EPR collection targets and EPR for mountainous region. Probably I can talk about that in my way forward. But yeah, that's it for now. Thank you, Roshan.
Thanks, Amli. I think what he said was, I was about to echo that, right? The insights really show the need for a mountain lens. The so-called recyclable PET bottles are so high, and so just that is there. Thank you. We'll come back to your way forward. Over to our own member, Dr. Rajan Kotru, who's got an extensive amount of work done across the Hindu Kush Himalaya, which expands the narrative from the Indian Himalayan region to a much broader landscape across transboundaries, with his work in Isimot, which intersects between climate and communities and sustainability. He is also a leader of IMI state chapter in Himachal. Over to you, Dr. Kotru. 5 minutes for your discussion points, and we'll come back to your way forward later.
Yeah, thank you, Roshan, but I will be switching off my camera because sometimes, the connections get bad. So, I just wanted to show my face and then, okay. I think quite a comprehensive work has been done, and it has been very much manifested in the report which you sent. And I must, first of all, congratulate all the 3 authors. Wonderful work done. But it also brings a compelling evidence that despite our work of last 10 years, waste is becoming a much more massive challenge than it was ever. Again, in one of your findings that our consumption is changing, it is increasing, and consumption has to be also countered with production being increased. And also what is lacking is the innovative products. That is where I feel all these EPR companies which are supposed to pick up this waste, starting with PepsiCo, which came at number 1. It is very, very interesting that it's not happening as happening in other parts of the world, that these companies are coming with some innovations when it comes to packaging material, and which is increasingly becoming a scourge in rural and urban areas. That is one part. But the second part is, the most of data we have, I should not be biased, but really comes from Northeast. And I must really congratulate you that you've been able to mobilize whoever has worked in Northeast to bring this data for 2024, have really been able to galvanize the momentum with young people, school children, Swachh Bharat Mission, and a lot of other actors which are there, NGOs which are active in the region. But I must now shift to Western Himalayas. I think most of us will agree that up to 80-85% of tourists which you are talking about actually come in 3 states: Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, and J&K. If you want to see the data, you can confirm it from there. The most of tourists which come to the Himalayas are in these 3 states. And they are pilgrims, they are non-behavioral people when it comes to waste. So that is a bit of skewness which I see in the data and the report. This might be also related to the fact that we did not deliver all the data which was supposed to come from HP, and you have very limited data or no data from J&K, and very limited data. I think I saw a couple of sites, maybe 10, 15 sites in Uttarakhand. So I think there I must really say that this skewness needs to be countered, because this is not a kind of a then pan-Himalayan picture which we might be getting, but I will be delivering you that data, whatever I have, collected here. The third part is the mobilization and the motivation you have created in Northeast is fabulous, I must say. I must admit, I pursued 3 panchayats here in Kangra district for 1 month to conduct a kind of a awareness campaign, and then also do a cleanliness campaign before 5th of June this year. But I must admit, only 1 panchayat agreed. There are reasons for that. The rural area and the panchayats believe that they are not creators of waste. It is the upper catchment, and it is the cities which are far away from us, and they are in the upper catchment. They are somewhere in the neighboring catchment. So we are not producing waste. That is one of their perceptions. Second perception is that youth are not collaborating, and people are not collaborating. I went to panchayat pradhans, had meeting with panchayat members, and they came out with this, that people are not, collecting for waste. They say it's none of our business. It is business of those municipality, business of government. We should really collect this waste. And so I'm giving you a perspective of Western Himalayas, and I can tell you most of the panchayats in Kangra will tell you the same thing. So maybe in Shimla, Mr. Sood is there. Maybe he can talk about different language later. But I'm talking about hardcore evidence from the rural areas where I had to really go 1 month to different panchayats to mobilize them for this waste collection, waste segregation, waste auditing. But nevertheless, this is the second level of perception which people have. So therefore, I think this has to be really mentioned. Third thing is, this year I really found out that there is hidden waste, which we will never reach, because that is lying hidden in the soil, and that's lying in the water, that's lying in our streams and nearby naulas and nearby our irrigation channels. So that is one of the major problems. Therefore, that's why we went into action here in Kangra. We dug out that waste from those irrigation channels, which you will not see on the surface, because normally we go around in the landscape and say in the forest land and in the agriculture land nearby naulas and nearby schools, but we don't go into the water. And believe me, I can give you one data straight away, which I have not shared with you. Over a 1 kilometer, there are 0.4 tons of waste. Out of that, 90% is plastic. So this is just to give you a kind of a feedback that hidden waste is not captured. And that is where the focus I would see next year we should get into the dirty soil and dirty water, and there we should capture. And I think later I will give you a couple of suggestions for way forward, because that is where we should hit. We should hit that this waste in water is ultimately coming to your own body in the shape of food you are eating, in the shape of water you are drinking, in the shape of water which your cattle are drinking. So I think that all has to really come next year in our. So that hidden waste really made my mind very conscious what we are doing with our water source. So I think I will stop here. I think I have several recommendations later, because 5 minutes are almost done. So let's have other discussion. But I have to go exactly at 6 to other meetings. So please give me the first person to give you some recommendations and way forward. Thank you very much for your kind attention and for your wonderful work.
Thanks, Dr. Kotru. Thank you. And what we'll do is go straight into recommendations from the 3 discussants. And since Dr. Kotru, you've already asked for that, I'll ask on Dr. Kotru to go first, Miko second, and Amli to go third. And I will not call upon each other, just pass it on to each other. Dr. Kotru, Miko, and Amli, please. Okay. And maybe we can, if you can condense it to 2 minutes, because we also need to have open house session. Thank you, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. I think I basically want to get into 3 points. One is innovations, second is incentives, and third is investments. When I talk about innovations, I think the previous speaker really mentioned EPR and the companies. One thing is clear, for instance, when you check the ENVI state data of 2024, which has just come out from the Ministry of Statistics, it clearly shows in the mountain states, the CSR is very limited. Only Assam, Arunachal Pradesh, and Uttarakhand have higher investment when it comes to corporate social responsibility of the business sector. And I think there is where we should hit it. All these companies which are into this EPR and have to get into EPR, I think one of the recommendations is we should ensure that CSR money, which is 2%, out of that we should fix clearly a 10% or 15% amount of the whole CSR of a company, which should go into waste management. This could be the one in, because we have now proven data which we have brought that these companies are creating a lot of waste here, and that can be one way of bringing those companies back in the shape of corporate social responsibility. And if you check all other mountain states, Tripura, Meghalaya, very limited money has come through corporate social responsibility. And if we relate it to waste, we can be really hitting the nail in the head. Second is really getting into the innovations in governance and innovations in management. I think their panchayats are very much handicapped when it comes to funds, when it comes to also the communication in terms of innovative communication to public. That waste is hitting us directly because we are eating this poison within the phase of 2 to 3 years, because we are drinking same milk which was given by the cattle. We are eating same rice and wheat which was produced with this polluted water, which has been polluted by the solid waste which was dumped into water. I think this has to come in a very, very communicative way, but it has to be innovative communication. I think the whole awareness packages and communication is yet not innovative in terms of touching my consciousness as a common man. So I think that's where I feel the rural area which we have to hit. And third is innovation in technologies and infrastructure which we are creating at the bottom level. It is not yet enough innovative in terms of technologies. In fact, there are technologies available which can decompose organic waste in a couple of weeks. So I think the government of India and the business sector has to get into those technology, as at least ensure that the organic waste is immediately put to decomposition. Because if you check all these marriage halls, hotels, dhabas, all the organic waste is ultimately getting into the, for instance, a marriage party or a pilgrimage site, most of the eatables are getting into the local water system. So if we have these organic based innovations, we should really put into, and that is where the I would say incentives must come. If there's a very good panchayat which has really done wonderful work, it should get directly money funded to its account. Like Prime Minister is making big statements on farmers, direct amount which is going to these. I think no department in between. The panchayats, the Zilla Parishad, which do wonderful work in waste management, they should get direct money in panchayat's account to really do further work in this waste management. This is the incentives I'm talking about, to give you very few. And then again, investments. I think there are several centrally sponsored schemes. I think time has come also through Swachh Bharat to invest more into waste management, especially when we talk about the mountains. We don't have enough attractive schemes at rural scale, which is a kind of a centrally sponsored scheme. I think we have to hit the nail with Niti Aayog that these particular scheme, and we can, as IMI with other institutions, NGOs, should plan the scheme and hand it over to Niti Aayog or Ministry of Environment, Forest, Climate Change to really see that mountains get a waste-oriented, centrally sponsored scheme, which can be then implemented by panchayats, municipalities, and maybe even district level actors. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I can go next, Roshan. So yeah, just moving forward, in terms of like recommendations under EPR, I think I'll leave that to Ambili to discuss us in her 2 minutes. I think just going back to the study and this particular findings in the Himalaya cleanups, it demonstrates that producers should be held accountable for the plastic pollution that they cause, and one thing that we need to look at or maybe explore in the future, if there are like legal pathways moving forward to actually make them accountable. So it's either looking or reporting violations under the EPR guidelines. I believe this is something that a number of CSOs in India are already doing, and making sure that these are documented and these are exposed. So if there are like violations that are happening, phantom plastic credits, or making false claims or reports, and I think the public should know about that. Second approach would be looking at possible cases or lawsuits that can be filed against corporate polluters. And I don't think the awareness tactics, I don't know if it's like effective in terms of like budging them to do something about these things. Maybe it's time to look at other ways to actually make them hurt by attacking their reputation, looking at the risk or heightened risk in terms of legal claims. We've seen this in other places like Europe or United States. I don't know what's the environment in terms of environmental regulations, but I think this is also a good pathway moving forward. Mili?
Thanks, Miko. So yeah, as I was saying, we do need a holistic EPR, and learning from the lessons of the poor implementation that has happened in cities, we need to make sure that those mistakes does not repeat. Just want to quote the sustainability commitment made by PepsiCo, that they say that by 2025, 98% of their packaging will be designed to be recyclable, compostable, biodegradable, or reusable. So notice the play of words, right? They say that they will be designed for recycling, and they're not even taking the commitment to ensure that 98% of their packaging will be recycled by them. So they're just designing it and then they're leaving it to the local corporations to make sure that it gets managed. So, brand audit, therefore, I think is a good tool to keep them accountable. Now, some of the ways that, we should be dealing with this is that designing recyclable plastic is not enough, especially mountainous region. We feel that business should have very active and significant logistic as well as financial participation to ensure that these decentralized centers are established and they engage the local informal sector, because what happened in the cities and everywhere else is that they just created a parallel system and they just wiped out the informal workers who are currently or who have been historically working in our cities and villages and towns to collect the recyclable plastic. So we need to ensure that their programs are inclusive of the waste workers and waste pickers who are already working and already cleaning up the work for them without any cost. Next, alternatives like compostable and bioplastic, we need to be a little wary of them because at Gaia BFFP, we think these are false solutions and they should be called out because it's not practically possible to compost them in community composters. They require special industrial composting plants. So again, it's a solution which may make people think that it's a solution, but it's actually not. And on the other hand, for mountain context, we feel that the packaging should be redesigned for reuse because of the challenges the mountain has. And probably they should implement a deposit return scheme, wherein the packaging is returned to a system where they take it back, clean it, wash it, put the the products in the packaging and put it back in the system. We need only the product. We don't need their packaging. So if they can create a system to take it back and recycle the packaging again and again, we don't need to think of how do we recycle it. We have to ensure that they keep reusing the packaging. On investment, I just want to highlight that one of our member in Mumbai, they did a study and they found out that 1 kg of MLP is approximately 11,000 MRP. Okay, so even if 1% of this MRP is used for EPR programs, a good funding can be available to waste workers to ensure collection. So in the future brand audits, probably we can also see that how much is the cost of 1 kg of MLP that is collected. And then that can be one thing that we can use to demand to invest in systems. Even if they invest 1% of that MRP, that is sufficient. And it is not the case in today's time. In cities, EPR, they do not even invest 1%. Lastly, from a public communication and advocacy point of view, I think we need to join forces with food groups to continue the battle against the rising food consumption in India. We should have a food movement. I'm not sure how many of you know, there is this person called Food Farmer. He's a public figure now, and he's been doing talks on the processed food consumption in India. So I think having a health movement, ensuring that FSSAI brings the rule of front of the package labeling. We should restrict their advertisement and ban of processed foods in school and so on. I think at least we can ensure that the packaged food consumption will go down. And lastly, I don't know how effective it is, but influence, celebrities like Akshay Kumar, who does movies like Padman and other movies of social cause, and Dhoni, these people are known for the good work that they do. I think we should write to these people and say that they should not be brand ambassadors for products like Sting and Lay's and other things. So I think these are small actions, but based on what I have learned from what happens in the city, I think this is a good opportunity on how do we want to rewrite EPR from a mountain lens. Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kotru, Miko, and Amli. And thank you for all your insights. Now we will move on to just having everyone's voices being heard. What we might do is, if you could raise your hands, and accordingly we will call on you. But Ram Charitra ji has had his hands on for a long while. So do you want to keep your comments right now? Yeah, and can you make it a bit brief? Everyone who is going to share, can you make it brief, please? Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Very interesting initiative all over. I have just like one observation and then one queries. So one of the presentation mentioned about the Chaudhary group, YY has ranked second in their place. And I know that the Chaudhary group basically originate from Nepal. And I don't know is there any similar kind of a strategy in the part of Nepal has been happen or not. So being myself located in Nepal, how can I help or raise this issue with the Chaudhary group in writing as a campaign and ask them to do their part for the cleaning, so that I can offer. The second query I want to raise, as the one of the major reason I joined, and I remember I earlier also joined in one webinar of your groups, and then as all of us we talking about mountain pollution, and there is mention about the upcoming UN plastic by Miko, some presentation, and we know that the revised upcoming UN plastic treaty after INC4 still has 47 times mentioning of marine pollution versus zero mentioning of mountain pollution. And then after that, our argument is until and unless we clean upstream mountain plastic pollution, downstream marine plastic pollution cannot be cleaned. So my urge, and then I am also following the INC, and I didn't heard any voice from government of India about inclusion of mountain plastic pollution in the treaty. So being a mountainous country, and then we have the similar problem of mountain pollution. Even Mount Everest has got microplastic in it. So my question is how we can come together, the likely minded organization and group and network, and raise this high mountain plastic pollution profile, not only in the region, but also the international initiative in upcoming UN plastic treaty. So that is my concern. So thank you once again giving me this opportunity to share something. Thank you.
Thank you, Ramsar. Thank you for your solidarity. You're right. Chaudhary Group is based out of Nepal, but they have a factory now in Sikkim also. And
I know it is international.
Yeah, for people in India, it's going to be a public limited company soon enough in India. So it'll be great to join hands. And I think Zero Waste Himalaya initially was imagined to be a pan-Himalayan network, and I think we can reach out. But I think the discussion that Amli brought in is also there because already in Nepal, there was also issues about health hazards of eating YY also. So I think we can really pick up on it also, whether it be from India and whether it be from Nepal, but definitely need to join hands. I just wanted to throw the question about international treaties to Amli. Would you want to take that question?
Sorry, I just went to fill my water bottle. I did
Sure, not a problem. So Amli, Ram sir from Nepal was asking that in the INC, he did not really hear about the mountain lens and discussion from the Indian contingent as such at the Global Plastic Treaty. And he was wondering why that was missed out. And is there something that we can do collectively to kind of have mountain voices heard at the global level? Do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. And maybe Miko can add to it. I think it's about, whose voices are being represented. So I think it's a very valid point when you said that, we talk about marine plastic pollution, but we don't hear plastic pollution in mountains. So I think what we really need to do is, as a group of CSOs, as members of Kaya and BFFP, we need to put our voices are out there. We have very limited representation from Indian members also who are active at plastic treaty spaces. But, we definitely need more members so that we can, like, for me, this is an eye-opening session because, PET bottles is never a problem for us. So I think what we really need is more representation. And if we have more representation, that's when we can pressurize or bring, to notice these facts to our Indian delegates who represent at INC spaces. So it's about, more people, more members joining hands from different groups so that we have different voices being heard. So I would really love to have, as many Zero Waste Himalayan members, not just from India, but from the neighboring countries also, so that we can include, plastic pollution in mountain as an issue also in the treaty text. So yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean,
Actually, it is mentioned 47 times as of now, the new revised text, the marine pollution, but versus zero mention of mountain pollution.
Thank you.
So
Miko, do
that
you want to respond? Yeah.
Yeah, I think yeah, I do acknowledge that, Ram, and I think if we talk about like mountain specific issues, I only saw it in the written submissions I've shared. If you want, if the others wanted to like read about it, I've shared the link in the chat box. And I think in terms of like how this particular problem started, or at least became more popular, admittedly, it's because of the marine debris. That's why we've seen this language over and over again, not just in the plastics treaty, but even if you talk about interventions, the top plastic polluters, for example, why it's Indonesia, Philippines, China, and so forth. It's connected to marine debris. But I think as a movement, it's something that we're trying to maybe try to change the narrative, and making sure that we're not stuck with these types of language or semantics, and making sure that everything is included. And I do acknowledge that it's mountain localities are not specifically included in the text, or at least the current revised consolidated text. But I do see some brackets, or at least some suggestions to include biodiverse areas and other geographies. So I think there's potential there. I think that the only I guess unfortunate and complicated part would be, at least for those following the treaty negotiations, you'll see a lot of these brackets and additions and suggestions, which are both good and both bad. Good because we're able to accommodate a lot of suggestions and ideas from a lot of member states, but it it complicates how we can try to arrive in a good, ambitious treaty. And I'm sure this negotiation will take a lot of time, even though we only have one meeting left in Korea in November. So yeah.
Thank you. Shall we move on to someone else who wants to raise a point, ask a question? Kindly raise your hands and we'll call on you to share your thoughts. Anyone in the house who has a pertinent question to be raised or a comment to share?
Roshan, can I talk?
Yes, please, Professor Zu. You're more than welcome to talk.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, all you guys are doing wonderful work. I have nothing to say except that because I work on disasters and I have been putting my complaints or whatever, the grievances in a portal called pgportal.gov.in. I found it a very effective way of communicating things and which are registered at the highest level, and you do get a reply. And not only do you get a reply, in fact, today I got a call from the centralized public grievance monitoring system asking whether I was satisfied with the complaint, which with the on the point which I had noted about the Sikkim disaster in the Tista Valley disaster in our area. So that may be an effective way of communicating your grievance, which is then replied to and acknowledged by at the highest level. Of course, you would have to register yourself, give your Aadhaar card number, etc., etc. But then I found it a very effective way of talking to them.
Thanks, Professor Zu. We will take one more last question, comment, suggestion, and then move on to.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello, hello, sir. Thank you so much for this webinar. It was very insightful. So thank you to all the resource person and organizers. I am from a small town called Seppa in Arunachal Pradesh, and I am a member of NGO, Coming River Rejuvenation Club. It's a very young NGO, and we have just started. And but I'm also a government employee, and I was a part of implementing the ban of single-use plastic in my town. We did that very vigorously. We also imposed penalties on shopkeepers who had in whose shops we found like plastic cutleries or plastic bags, but it somehow felt very, after that all the activities, it felt very inhuman, because the question we got was, the main question we got was, what is the alternative for SUPs? Cost-effective alternatives. They were asking us to suggest cost-effective alternatives and all that, but we had no reply because we were just following orders from the state government. So to all the concerned resource person, if you have the reply to this answer, please suggest me some things so that I can have the reply to the shopkeepers of my town.
Sure, thank you. Anyone wants to take the question from the panelists, discussants? I think for me, my quick one is like, it wasn't too long ago when we didn't have any of those single-use plastics, especially I've traveled in Arunachal, and there's such a lot of bamboo, there's such a lot of traditional, systems. And I think sometimes we've got onto the convenience part of it. And sometimes we also get too caught up on this thing called alternatives. And if you look at single-use plastic ban, it is really low order. Amli is already mentioned, it's just 3% of the total plastic production. And so it was actually based upon utility index and environmental impact, the 19 of them. And so actually, I think having a bit of information and insight a bit more on the pollution part of it, the environmental impact, as well as the health impact, might enable you to give a direct answer. We can definitely take this conversation outside also. We would love to continue discussing, and we will drop in our contact points and we could take this forward more, right? And great that you joined in, especially from the government department, and also shared your concerns and challenges of implementing the single-use plastic ban. So I'm going to drop in my personal email ID and we can get in touch, right? Thank you. So I think there's been some great insights, but we'll just be conscious of our time. It's not always that we spend 2 hours on a webinar. I call upon now Mr. Ramesh Negi, the president of Integrated Mountain Initiative, a truly Indian Himalayan region man who retired as Chief Secretary of Arunachal Pradesh and went on to work in Delhi Jal Board, as well as worked a lot in plastic and solid waste, and continues to work on issues of environment sustainability as well as child rights. Negi sir, your turn now. Thank you. Negi sir, are you there or has he dropped out?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes,
I'm
sir.
there.
Yes, sir. Perfectly.
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
good evening. Well, in the end, for president to speak, it's advisable to speak the least because all the wise people have spoken. And I'm very happy at this participation pan-Himalayas and also across from Philippines. And I could see in the beginning one participant, Dr. Alamgir from Bangladesh also. So it's a very heartening thing. I have only one or two takes from here. As far as the data goes, definitely the data is pan-Himalaya, but there are some gaps which Dr. Kotru mentioned. And second take I have is that the awareness part with the school children, we have done a lot with the civic society. But I would say that the stakeholders, the traders and the tourism stakeholders, the hoteliers, restaurant associations, we need to work with them because it is there that the maximum generation of plastic happens. So two ways. One is persuasion, second is regulation. The one way is innovative regulation, which we can have through tourism policy. Dodu mentioned about this banning, the plastic spoons very well. And of course, I'm very happy that she's come from Sepa. It is one of the remotest district of Arunachal Pradesh. And so there are alternatives like bamboo, of course, Roshanji mentioned. So we have to speak to these hoteliers. I saw in some of the hotels in the Himalayan region only, they are not using plastic bottles in the rooms. It can always be the glass bottles. Of course, the high-end hotels, they can afford it. It's only a question of management getting sensitized. Similarly, the toothbrushes are with bamboo and spoons are with bamboo. A lot of things, they can take it as a pride. So we have to work with these association, hotel, restaurant. And third thing which came out was little disturbing that the around the schools you have tobacco products, the cigarette, gutka, tobacco. That would require an awareness and a little ruthless implementation. And we'll have to make a public noise about it. One more suggestion I have in the end of it, that all these findings which we have made could be after this is declared in every district or in the state headquarters, we could have some display by way of collage or paintings or whatever. Like I would just give an example of Sikkim that in Gangtok, your central place in the market, if you have a display a little bit organized there, it is a very good way of showing what you have done. Similarly, Shimla or Itanagar, wherever. That's one way to popularize it. And second is a little bit of policy initiative with the finance commissions of the state and the finance commission, even central finance commission, if we can make some recommendations, because EPR implementation is very difficult in Himalayas. Recycling is very difficult. Processing is very difficult. If we can make some document, maybe a very, very simple one for the state finance commissions or the central finance commission, and this platform which is come out with these recommendations can take it further even with the Parvat Manthan, which is the where we are already part of this vertical in Ministry of Urban Development. So I would not take more time, but definitely the schools, the market associations, the restaurant association, your hotel associations, and the civil society, plus the government. The regulatory part is also very important. We should all come together. And I am very proud about it that the IMI in the last 10 years and this our program for last 7 years have really had a pan-Himalayan impact, and we are having a common voice against the common problems, and also to have a better destiny for Himalayas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Negi sir. Thank you. Thank you for your words. I now call upon someone who has been, I can introduce as a founding member of Integrated Mountain Initiative, as well as a founding member of the Zero Waste Himalaya. I call upon RP Gurung, or fondly we call him RPG, to summarize as well as place and record the vote of thanks for all our participants. RP, over to you.
Thank you, Roshan. A very good evening to everyone. I'm sorry I could not sort of access my laptop video today. Camera is not working, so I will not be able to show myself. Apologies for that. Yeah, it has been a very, very interesting discussion today, right? From very local, remote locations, the situations there, up to an international level. It is very thought-provoking and interesting for me. So I've been told to sort of, in a way, summarize the way forward, but there have been so many points actually today that have come up that I shall have to be brief and, just touch on some of them. I think overall, what has emerged is that the Himalayan cleanup, which we have been doing since 2018, is a thing which is much needed. The practicality, the usefulness of this, as communications, the results of this Himalayan cleanup, its usefulness in terms of bringing about awareness, to many areas, as you realize that many places, especially like Dr. Kotru mentioned, like in the Western Himalayas, there is no awareness, and as the THC as an awareness tool mechanism, and also as a tool for communicating with the policymakers, making a point for ourselves, is very, very important. And there is a need now to translate the results into action points, actionable points, into policy briefs, right at this where the along with the policymakers and influential bodies. So that is one that has been very clear. And I think in terms of, if you go to at a grassroots level, where all most of the participants contributed, there has been a lot of promising actions that could be taken. Like we've always had this issue about after we clean up a place, then what? Next time there are complaints that again it resorts back to what it was before. People still do the littering. So I think we need to go beyond this, beyond the Himalayan cleanup, and communications, like Preeti mentioned, communicating with the students, and the bringing about change in, people have mentioned that they're changing consumer habits now. influencing communities and students. So we need to work there. It's just not cleanup, but bringing about a change. And then I think there is also societal influences like affluence and all that is happening in the mountains, which is bringing more waste due to our consumptive habits. There is also, I think, like Mr. Paul mentioned, there's a larger awareness now being generated through the Himalayan cleanup, and behavioral changes have been happening, and even policy level changes have been happening. So we need to continue this. It's mentioned about eco clubs, and their influence also, like, how could you use all this and involve the big companies like the hydropower companies working in your area to contribute also, then I think Dr. Kotru also mentioned EPR of the companies, So I think the fact that 75% of the waste that has been collected is still plastic, and that 88% of the plastic, that 88% of the waste that is collected is plastic, and that non-recyclable is 75%. That shows the big problem here. And we also have the added problem about our the remoteness of our mountain areas, where obviously plastic bottles, even which are normally recycled in the plains, does not get collected. It remains as waste. So overall, what is coming is that there is a need for a specific EPR for the mountains and a specific mountain-specific waste policy. And that also needs to come out at an international level, as was mentioned by Mr. Ramcharitra, that we need to have it in the INC4. How we could get it there, I think Miko has mentioned that he could try and help over there. We do hope it is done, because mountain voices are not heard beyond our regions. So it is important that we have these voices heard at different forums and at international forums also. We do hope that the INC4 would carry some mention about plastic waste in the mountains. Priya also mentioned that EPR in the mountains is hardly, existent. It's not there at all. Because the high cost of sending multi-layered plastics, collecting and sending multi-layered plastics, and I think one good suggestion from Ambali, the mention of 1 kg of MLP. How many times is the MRP? Some 11,000 times, if I heard that correct. That was interesting. I think Dr. Kotru's recommendations were very, 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 useful. The innovations part of it, where you get the CSR companies to contribute from the CSR. Of course, Dr. Kotru, I would like to mention here that their EPR commitments should not be covered up by the use of their CSR funds, because CSR funds are just meant for allocated separately, and EPR is allocated separately. So they should not get away with using one to cover the other. There needs to be better communication, definitely, especially definitely on the issue of health now. So much of info, so much of scientific data coming out about, and all the junk food and the use of in fact very harmful items like the Sting and other energy drinks, which are actually not meant for young children. That being prevalent, the prevalence of tobacco products next to schools, all these require very effective communications and working with the authorities. I think the incentives part of it, which you mentioned, panchayats doing good work, being given money, and rural schemes from the Niti Aayog, those are good ones. I think Miko's suggestion for lawsuits against corporate polluters, that is also interesting. That's an area we have not really explored, but we are exploring legal incentives through Harshad and Ritwik. I think we do hope to actually target some corporate polluters also in this manner. I think we could start off with the Chaudhary group, and here Ramcharitra ji has mentioned providing help from Nepal side on this. If you could work together, let's see how we could approach them to cut down on their waste, and take responsibility for the waste, basically, because a packet of noodles has so many smaller sachets in it, then yeah, I think if you look at Ambali's suggestion not to wipe out the informal workers from the programs that the companies may be coming up, and the future where the companies have given commitments, that 90% will be recycled, their packaging would be recycled. We are yet to see that. I think this suggestion about also what we also Zero Waste has mentioned is like, promoting local foods, and I think reclaiming our food spaces with local food cultures. I think the mountain regions are a treasure house of, ethnic food cultures, So that needs to be, people need an awareness campaign for highlighting this and bringing people back, instead of going through all the fad foods that are marketed on social media and TV. We should get back to our roots and celebrate our food cultures. Yeah, I think a campaign to get celebrities like Akshay not to promote Sting and all that we've been thinking of. I think, and we need to target. I don't know. At one time we did some, I think, collected waste to some of them. Okay. I think Professor Daju's thing of using this a suggestion of you registering our grievances on this government portal. That is a suggestion which we could take up. Also, I thank our president, Mr. Negi, for his suggestions, of working with tourism stakeholders. I think, yeah, a simple thing like collecting food waste directly from the hotels and restaurants and linking them up with, these farmers, animal husbandry farmers, that is one idea which we have had, and we hope we could work on that. We could use the results of the Himalayan cleanup and display it in different places, as well as approach the government, like through the finance commissions and the state and the central finance commissions for interventions. And of course, with Parvat Manthan also we could work. So this is a sort of a gist of, I was not be able to cover everything, but I think it has been a very, very lively session, very interesting. And I do hope that this time we would be using the results of the THC more effectively, right? And that IMI would be able to, we would be able to join hands with IMI and carry it forward through all the states and at the central level. So that I would like to conclude my way forward here. There are many, many suggestions, but I think we should continue this dialogue. And now I come upon my vote of thanks. So first of all, thank you everyone for being here. I think we still have how many? I noted at one point of time there were almost 55 participants. Now we're down to 36, but thank you all for still being there, whoever's here. I would first like to thank all the 15,000 volunteers and the 450 organizations and institutions, like including schools, NGOs, CSOs, government agencies, etc., plus the informal waste pickers and aggregators across the 9 Himalayan states, union territories, and districts who participated in the Himalayan Cleanup 2024 by cleaning up over 450 sites across the Himalayas. I would like to thank Gaia and BFFP for their support and participation in today's event. Zero Waste Himalaya, along with our mountain communities and IMI, and other friends will continue to ensure that our voices are for a cleaner, plastic-free and sustainable Himalaya is heard across the country and the world, and especially amongst the policymakers and the polluting companies. Yes, our mountains do deserve better. I would like to thank the discussion panelists, Mr. Miko Alino, and Ms. Ambili Adityan, and Dr. Rajan Kotru for their valuable insights to today's discussions. I would like to thank our president, Mr. Ramesh Negi, for his address, and also would like to thank the IMI state chapters and the state institutions for their help in the cleanup. I would like to thank the THC stewards who spoke today of their experiences, Ms. Preeti Chavan of Little Green World, Ladakh, Mrs. Usha Lachingpa, Green Circle and Friends of Chonge, Gantok, Mr. R.K. Paul Chawang of Amaya, Arunachal Pradesh. People like them represent many champions across the mountains whose dedication, whose love and concern for the mountains continues to bind us and to inspire us to keep going. It is this common thread we have amongst us, that makes the THC movement, the Zero Waste Himalaya movement so strong. I would like to thank all the individuals, NGOs, CSOs, ULBs, PRIs, and their other organizations across the mountain states who participated in THC 2024. And a special thanks to the Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin of the Rural Development Departments of Sikkim and the Education Department of Sikkim for partnering in the huge Sikkim cleanup, 259 locations, and collected almost 70% of the waste collected in THC 2024. Thanks to all those from near and far who have tuned in today to participate in today's meeting. I saw, like Dr. Resident mentioned that there was someone from Bangladesh also, and then I think we have Mr. Ramcharitra from Nepal. I think Harshita from India Hikes was there, Buddha Singh from Deer Park, MSDF Mizoram, I think Disa Tripura, KRRC Arunachal. Then we have Dipendra and others from WWF. And that was Mr. MD Alamgir, I think, from Bangladesh, Mr. Rajesh Goswami from Waste Warriors, and so many more. I cannot mention everyone. From Zero Waste Himalaya, our special thanks to Mr. Pasang Lepcha for designing the mobile-based app for the cleanup and for all the troubleshooting he did during the cleanup, then, collating all the humongous data that was collected, and all this he has done on a gratis basis. So thank you very much, Pasang. Okay. Thanks to all my behind-the-scenes colleagues in Zero Waste Himalaya for all their hard work in making THC 2024 happen. They have been working non-stop way before the cleanup to organize and conduct the THC 2024, and in preparing and designing the report. They have told me not to mention the names, but I'm sure all of you know, most of you know who they are. Lastly, thanks to Roshan and Priya for anchoring this event, and to Nupur and Dikila for their communication support, and everyone else in IMI who have helped in this, and anyone else who have left out, inadvertently left out. I'm sorry. Thanks to everyone. Thank you everyone for this evening, for joining in this evening.
Thank you, RP. Thank you, everyone. We call it a day. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, and have a very
Thank you.
Good night.